Hello and welcome. I'm Joe Pryor, and this is a tutorial video in importing contacts into Odoo CRM. Now, keeping your contacts, these are people that you know on LinkedIn or Facebook or friends from your professional history, keeping track of them all over the place in your old Rolodex or on your phone or in your Outlook email is hard to keep up with, especially if you're trying to keep that data up to date across multiple systems. It's even harder if you've got multiple folks interacting with the same individual or individuals or even organizations, and tracking who's making what updates and changes when across, say, multiple Excel spreadsheets or an Outlook contact list is, a real-time sync. And so the reason that we're excited about Odoo CRM and Odoo Contacts is that it will be a single point of contact or a single location for us to store all the information about these contacts, and any changes that any user makes are going to percolate across the entire system. And now it's a lot of work on the front end, especially because we have a very large Rolodex of people that we keep in touch with. But many hands make small work. We'll go ahead and spread that out. And the longer that we utilize this CRM, like an Odoo or something in the future, the more those time savings dividends will pay off. So today we're going to talk about a couple of things. I'm going to introduce you, the viewer, to Odoo Contacts. We're going to talk about a couple of the things you can do in the application itself and how you can manage the data around a contact and the different kinds of contacts that are in the system. We're going to talk a little bit about data fields and data mapping, so that you can get your data imported into Odoo as efficiently as possible. And then lastly, I'm going to import a contact on screen into Odoo. So with that being said, why don't we go ahead and jump right into things. Okay, so I have Odoo pulled up on my computer. The first time you log into Odoo, this is what you're going to be presented with. These lists of applications and maybe a settings button and perhaps your personal account preferences and that kind of thing. For the purposes of today's video, we are mostly interested in the contacts application, although obviously we're also interested eventually in the CRM application. Today's tutorial is focused on contacts. So go ahead and tap or click on the contacts button, and this will take you to our contacts view. Now, as you can see, we've begun to slowly populate this system with contacts. We have both people, myself here, I'm Joe Pryor, and we also have organizations. So Frank Paul and Source to Pay Advisory LLC or SAP Ariba, etc. So you have both people and you have organizations, and we can do things with these people. If you click on just, let's say, me, for example, you come over here to the action button, you click this, you have a couple of different things you can do. You can send me a text message, you can delete me, you can archive me, etc. And the reason you would archive versus delete is delete if you no longer want to keep that person's information, and archive if they're no longer an active contact in our database, but we'd like to keep them on the records, eventually. We can click on the edit button to make changes to me as a user, or we can create a new person altogether, and we'll get to that in a second. So we also have the opportunity to maintain data around organizations, and this video is an excellent example or an opportunity for me to illustrate for you how you would do this live. So when I created this database, it created the company I work for, Symphony Advisors, at the same time, but it attached my email address to the card for the whole company. Well, that's obviously embarrassing. So we're going to go ahead and edit it right now. You'll also notice that the information that's currently saved about Symphony Advisors is fairly bare bones. And so I didn't actually know what the contact email address for Symphony was. And this is a good note for you, the user. If you don't know some of this information about a client or a company that you're working with, one of the best places to pick that up is the website. And so for Symphony has an excellent website with a lot of great data in it. But the important thing is how to get in contact with it. And that's the Contact Us button down here, or information down here. So we have both a phone number and an email address. So let's go ahead and add those. So it's very simple. You just click in here, and we don't want to have them emailing me anymore. We want to have them emailing symphony@symphony.com. And it really is as simple as that. I'm also going to go ahead and type in the phone number that they gave us, 1-800-445-7595. And when I save this, this should auto format to be an international number. So we just press save, and we have that information nice and fixed in Odoo. So we have the appropriate email address, and we have a phone number you can get a hold of somebody at Symphony with. And we could also change the logo if we wanted to make just the blue swirl, or perhaps the word Symphony larger and more visible, those kind of things too. So around the contact card, you have a lot of sort of subordinate secondary information. So there's the main entity as Symphony Advisors, and then underneath that is contacts and addresses. So you can have the different sub-offices or subordinate offices of Symphony Global Headquarters, which is located in Cincinnati. You can have the cards for all of the secondary locations. So you click on that, you'll get all the location for Symphony in Singapore. You click on, I've attached myself, Joe Pryor, to Symphony Advisors, so you click on that and I'll come up. And so you can attach a lot of secondary information, and then when you come to the main contacts page, you'll notice that a couple of these entities now have a sort of their main picture, and then in the bottom corner of that picture is the company they're attached to. One last thing, while we're looking at the overall contact view, there are other ways you can look at this view here. So you have, right now it's all cards. You can also get the list view, and you'll get kind of a more Excel style list of all the people on this list. And the nice thing about the list view, and this is more good for administration over a long term, is you can do bulk actions. And what's nice about that is if you wanted to just export out specific entities versus the entire list, you could do that with bulk actions. In the future, when this list gets bigger and bigger, we can actually filter out just individuals or just companies. We can group by region. We have a lot of ability to sort of filter the data down, and then once you get that filter that you like, you can then export that specific filter. We also have the ability we can also click on these with the map. And then what's nice about that is you can kind of have a visual indication of where in the world all of your contacts are located. So let's just some other ways you can kind of look at the data in the contact screen. And then we can also pop back into the contact card and take a look at some of the extra information contained within. If we had a record of previous sales or purchases made by Symphony Advisors, we track them here. So this is a great place to store information on previous projects we've done for other clients in the future. And then lastly, we have a place for internal notes. Now these are sort of the miscellany notes that don't quite fit anywhere. One of the great places to put all the extra great information we have captured in the 4P tracker might actually be here, talking about we what relationships we do and don't have. So when you're creating a new contact, this is the first way you can do it. You can just create a new contact, click on create, and you'll see that really the only thing that you really absolutely have to do is fill in the underlined button name. So this is going to be my test contact, and that's it. That's the whole thing. You're done. You've created a contact. Now, in the future, you can go in and update this and fill in more data and that kind of thing. But what's great about this sort of functionality is it allows us to be very explorative, but still get things down without requiring a lot of effort. Now, we don't really care about test contact, so we're going to go ahead and delete test contact. What I would instead like to do is I'd like to import a contact. You go ahead and click on the import button, and you'll have a bunch of different options here. You can load a file if you've already got one created, and I do, and I'll show you that on camera in a second. There's also here a handy basic template. Now this is a very basic template, but what I did is I went to the 4P tracker. This is the 4P tracker, and you can find it in the business development team. And the channel is called CRM Tracking. This is just the most recent 4P tracker. And for the purposes of this tutorial, I went to the top row of the Possibles tab. It's locked. I didn't make any changes to anything. I just grabbed all the relevant data for entity number 1, Rio Tinto. And I just went right across the line and I filled in whatever we could from the 4P tracker, and I put it into Excel. So it's in Excel, and to illustrate a little bit of what can go wrong in the import process and how you can get around those things, I've created kind of a bad template. This is my starter template or bad template. And the issue here is that a couple of these column headers, the top row here is a column header. A couple of these column headers are not going to match up directly with what Odoo is expecting to see, and you'll have an opportunity in the software to correct that. So what you'll get when you see all this kind of stuff, you click on, well, first you'll see the angry red text telling you that things don't work, right? But you can also click on test, and you'll see that there are a number of errors that show up. Now, it's requiring a name in row 2. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But we're also seeing an issue that a field doesn't match an acceptable entry. So America, for example, is not an appropriate entry. So we'll fix that. Click on see appropriate values, and you type in United States, and it gives you, oh, this is what I need to change it to. So I'll go back and change, my Excel data to read United States or US, and then the system will be okay with that. The other thing that we're looking at is all of these columns don't match up to anything in the system. And why is that? So what you can do, the first option is you can go back to your Excel and fix it to be the headers that they would expect. But we don't know what those are yet. So we're going to try and typing in street and seeing what comes up. Street. Okay. And then street 2 and city. I mean, some of this stuff is really obvious, and you just need to kind of make sure. State. So we'll also run into an issue that IL. Yep. Found multiple matches for state. IL it could be a lot of things. So when you're running into these kinds of errors, the system will tell you kind of what's the problem, and then you can, I think it's easier to go back to your core data and make those changes. And so we have here, my bad data set. We make these basic changes. What was it? Company name. So we change that to street, and then street 2 and city, state, and we change that to read Illinois. And then the country was United States. These simple changes like this can make the import go a lot smoother. And we'll see in a little bit here, I'm going to use the good template, and we'll run off of that. All right, so we've loaded our file, right? Our good template, loaded our file. We've imported everything, and it all matches up, and we're testing it. This is the best button. And it tells you, it helps you figure out what you're running into. So I've gotten an error. Contacts requires a name at row 2. And I got very confused for a little bit trying to figure out why. Like, it has a name, but it doesn't have a name. It has a company name. And name is an entirely different data field. And you can also, they have this handy template right here. And that shows you the things that you need to figure out. When I flag an entity as a company, it is a true-false test. So a 1 or a 0. 1 is a company, 0 is not a company. So I need to make some changes to my template. So instead of company name, we're going to just have name. And then we're going to have is a company, mimicking the template that Odoo provides. Is a company. And we are going to think this one is a company, so we're going to give it a 1. That is just, it is a true false. 1 is true, 0 is false. And that should be our errorless import to Odoo. Boom, everything lines up. Is a company, 1. You see how it already matches up with all of these files, and we should test it. And everything is valid. So let's go ahead and import that data. We've created a new contact, Rio Tinto, if we edit it. And we can start adding internal notes here, or adding some contacts, because there's a lot of information I don't have just from the basic data entry of Rio Tinto that is captured in the 4P tracker. And this is the stuff that I want to start bringing over, like who their internal supporters are. So Shirley Hung or Allison Reynolds. And we also have a lot of good data in terms of who at Symphony has worked with Rio Tinto, Jeff West and Frank Paul. This is information we want to capture, and we can start capturing it in contacts and addresses or internal notes or who's responsible for the client, that kind of information. And so that's the basics of importing a client. Is the important thing is to be really careful about the title names. And for companies, you have to set them as a company, and for not companies, you can set them as a 0. You can actually use this same template for not just companies, but for everything. So I'm going to rename this Odoo import template, and I'm going to share this with the rest of the group. You guys can use the basics of my work here to get rolling and start importing content, start importing contacts. In the future, I'm going to be releasing a video about how to prepare a new opportunity in the pipeline of the CRM application, but this video has already gone long enough. So with that being said, I will leave you guys to it. So I'll see you in the next one. This is Joe Pryor saying happy importing.